Running with Maverick and Wolfman. It's an early morning for us here in Pennsylvania.
Indeed it is. Don't forget to find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and the big one, YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, hit the little bell so you get notified when we release great content. What do we got today?
I was thinking we talk a little bit about running etiquette.
Like track etiquette or?
Like a little bit of everything.
Okay.
So let's just kind of jump into some things. First thing, let's just say that you're running in a group and you're not really familiar with the people in the group. You just met up with a group, going for a run, you're the new guy. What's the rule, Wolfman? Do you take the lead and just get going and set the pace? What do you do?
I mean, I think the first rule is don't have Taco Bell the night before. No. If I meet up with a group and I don't know anybody, I just kind of hang back and see where the pace is going and then kind of tuck in somewhere. If it's a group that has even a person or two I'm familiar with, I'll kind of gravitate toward those people and be with them. But sometimes on group runs where I know people, it all depends on who's training for what, and that kind of determines who kind of takes the pace. But we generally kind of stay together, maybe separate on some hills and things, and ultimately end up back together. So how about you?
Well, if I was in that situation, I'd probably just work into the group, see, kind of towards the back of the pack, see kind of how the pace is going, try not to be that guy that comes in and tries to take over the whole entire training run.
Look at me in my speed suit. This guy wore a speed suit for a 13-mile run.
That usually works out to try to fill a group out, see what's going on, see what the conversation is, if there is a conversation. That's another thing. Like, what if you're in a group and no one's talking? Is that okay to start the conversation?
Yeah, so I don't mind quiet sometimes, but there are those times where it's kind of an awkward silence because nobody knows anybody. Usually start by cracking little jokes here and there, depending on what's going on around us. And then sometimes people talk and sometimes it just remains a silent run.
Now, have you ever been in the situation where someone just talks with no break, no stoppage, just...
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind that either.
Prefer that? That was okay. Got it.
In some ways that's nice because it keeps the run going, you know what I mean? Like the next thing you know, you're just kind of done. I've never been with anybody that goes on and on and on and it's not interesting, but I mean, that probably frustrates some people because they're in the group to have discussion and then one person's just going, but it doesn't bother me.
Okay, now, if you're on the run and a car comes up and there's a big group, you're running 4 across, what do you do?
Oh, that's easier when you know people because then you kind of, who's going to take the lead, who's going to drop back. When I'm with people I don't really know, I think I tend to just drop back.
So, for example, Tour de France is on, right?
Yeah. I haven't watched any yet. But.
Well, I'm just going to say this. If you're not familiar with the Tour de France, you got to watch a little bit of it. To see the cyclists be as close as they are and communicate the way they do and know where to go and what to do to avoid crashes. There's still always crashes, but they avoid a ton of crashes.
Yeah.
Now, imagine a group of runners, same kind of way, trying to work their way through. That's pretty much what a college race was like in cross country.
Yeah.
You have a ton of people from a bunch of different schools all together trying to figure out where to go. Now, when you have the starts, they're always a little messy, a little hairy, right? During the race, it thins out. It's a little easier. There's passes and places that, of course, it's going to have somebody possibly wipe out. But for us, I know when we would run in a big group in college, you kind of knew what to do. Like you said, you kind of knew who would take the lead, where to fall in. You would kind of move to the side. If there was a car coming and it was a dangerous spot, you kind of fell into a line, kind of knew what to do.
Yeah.
There's usually someone that was fresher would usually take the lead, try to get up front, because it does take more to lead than it does to be in the back of the pack. We all know that. With cycling, it's even worse than in running, but it does take more energy to be in the front. But there are people that will typically take that lead and set the pace and do that kind of thing. Now, if you're new to the group, once again, it's probably best to work into the pack, maybe in the back of the pack, so you're not ticking anybody off, because you want to be friends with the people you're running with, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the worst things you can do is if you're in a group and you're not toward the back of that group and something like that happens, is just stop. That's where people trip and fall and stuff like that. Like, make sure
Yes.
you keep moving and kind of funnel into a line. Yeah.
It is better to stop than to cause a accident or trip somebody up on a run. If there's a situation where there's a car coming and you really don't know what's going to happen, it's better to stop and get out of the way than to keep going.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had that happen too. We've had people not paying attention, run into somebody, knock them right over. I mean, they're not a happy camper after that. We'll put it that way. So,
That is true.
I mean, thinking about like when we were freshmen and then we had freshmen come on the team, a lot of times that's what they would do. You know, most of the guys would just kind of work their way into the group towards the back of the pack
Mm-hmm.
to learn how the big group ran together, because they're coming from smaller teams usually and teams that aren't as talented. So when you mix it up with guys that can run as fast or faster than you, you kind of have to figure that out. So it's easier in a group of like 2-3 people than it is in a group of like 8 to 10 people.
Oh, yeah. The smaller the group, it's definitely easier to do that.
Now, here's another thing. So not everybody knows this, but when you're running on a road, you run opposite traffic, not
Correct.
with traffic. Now, there's times where you will run with the traffic, but
Yeah.
typically you run opposite traffic. So the vehicle can see you, you can see the vehicle, and then you can react. Now, for some reason, there are people that will always run with the traffic.
Right.
Hey, it's your decision. But just so you know, typically that's not how it's done. Now, cycling is the opposite. You would
Right.
cycle with the traffic. It makes more sense. You're on a vehicle essentially, and you're going with the traffic. Now, cars are supposed to give room to cyclists, right? In the state that we're in, it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
I think, 4 feet. Now,
Oh, I thought it was like 6 or something like that. I thought it was a lot, but I'm
I
not
believe
sure.
I believe it's 4 feet, but we can always correct that if it's wrong.
Yeah, we can. We'll fact check that.
So that's because of safety. We want the
Right.
cyclists to be safe, obviously. Now, some drivers get ticked off about that. That does happen. Sometimes, like I've been on rides where people do some dumb stuff. So obviously that's going to tick off a driver. So I get that. But
Yeah.
it's supposed to have some room, offer them some room, make a safe pass so everyone's in good shape, right? Running doesn't exactly have that same kind of thing going on. I've experienced a lot of room from cars
I have
most of the
found
time.
it. Yeah, I have found it depends on where you are and things like that. But I think people generally give you some room. Some people give you a whole lane. I think
Mhm.
that's a little excessive. But I would honestly rather people slow down and move over a little bit than keep going the same speed and move over the whole next lane. But that's my preference. Usually I'm just happy they've moved over.
Now, right, and I agree with that. And I also feel that the runner has a responsibility to move over a little bit as well. Like if
Oh,
you've got
yeah,
extra room, you shouldn't be running on the line. Like there's no
right.
reason to run on
Yeah.
the line of the road if you've got 4 feet of shoulder.
Yeah, if you've got
So
a shoulder, I agree. You move over as well, you know.
even if it's gravel or grass that's not treacherous, I
Right,
still feel you should move over a little bit when that car comes to pass.
right.
Now we've run some dumb runs where we've been on fast, highways or near highways, where we probably shouldn't have been running unless it was like a quick, crossover or like, a block or something like that. But we've run on some runs where we're on a major road for a while. Um, Not the smartest thing to do. Definitely wouldn't recommend that. If you can get away from that, that's so much better and safer.
Yeah.
Um,
It makes the run
because
nicer too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, it's not only your safety, it's also the driver's safety. Because if that driver isn't paying attention and then freaks out, I mean, you can cause
Hmm.
an accident from that. So I definitely wouldn't recommend running on anything that's a fast road or a road that obviously is not designed for running. Now, I mean, there's
Hmm.
places that I've gone where you see a highway has a running and cycling path, and it's a highway. You know what I mean? There's like it's a fast road. There's a good amount of traffic, but it's not like a 4-lane highway or whatever. It's not like something crazy like that. It's something that's obviously
It's not like
heavily
the
trafficked
interstate.
at times, and they've lined it out. They've designated a spot for cyclists. They've designated a spot for runners. Um, but you got to use your head and you got to be smart about it. And you have to have respect for the vehicle as well, because they're not always going to know exactly what you're doing. They're not all runners or cyclists. So you have to pay attention and be a little courteous. And same thing with the drivers.
Safety.
Safety first, PR is second, people. Now,
Fun.
I have to ask you, what about during a race?
For what?
As far as conversation, for example.
Oh, um, full
Let's
on
say we're running
conversation.
let's say that we're running the Boston Marathon. We've been running a couple miles together. We happen to have about the same pace.
Yeah.
It's getting towards maybe the latter half of the race, so the last 13.1. Are we conversing? Are we not conversing? Is it okay to keep the conversation going? At what point should we stop the conversation?
I I have found that if I'm it depends on how what I'm trying to do.
We're,
If
we're both trying to run, we've established that we're both trying to run good times.
I have found that if you're working hard and the other person's working hard, maybe you start with some conversation early in the race, and then as it continues, like you said, that conversation becomes less and less. Um, just because you're getting more and more tired. But I will usually chit chat to some degree most races, marathons, half marathons maybe, 5 and 10Ks usually not. Um, the 9 milers, it depends on what kind of shape I go into them as.
Okay.
So, because it's easier to talk to, I think, in the marathon, because even if you're trying hard, you're not running your 5K pace for your marathon. So you have a little bit of extra wind. And I think sometimes it helps keep you from going that 5K pace when you're only, 6 miles into a marathon. You still got 20 miles to go. You don't want to be going 5K pace.
Right.
It usually doesn't end well for you.
Yeah, I would say, when you're in a race, you definitely don't want to be conversing to the point where you're taking away from your ability to get a
Right.
PR. You
Yeah.
don't want to be over the top, dramatic, laughing, jumping all over the place, wasting energy. But at the same time, the longer the race, the more ability you'll have to have a conversation, have a laugh, do some things like that. It's not going to matter quite as much. Now, obviously, we're not talking about like an elite going for a PR or professional running. Like once you get into those kind of caliber running, like you know what to do, and it's very you know isolated. You're not talking, you're not conversing. You're really focused in doing that. But if you're going for a good time, if you're being serious about it, especially in a longer race, there is some time for that. I mean, I've been in 5Ks even where I'm like, I could talk a little bit, chit chat here or there, but trying to conserve energy overall because of how quick the pace is and how much that's going to kind of suck at the end if you wore yourself out with wasted energy.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
So,
go
yeah,
ahead.
No, you go ahead. No,
I
you
was
go
just
ahead.
saying, you go. You go. You go.
No, I don't. You go.
I like to, even in the marathon, I like to engage the crowd a bit. It helps me. So even when I'm like super, super tired, I'll make jokes to people next to me, and I'll make jokes to the crowd, and encourage them to cheer and things like that. So, it
Now
takes your mind off of it.
I have to be honest. I mean, that's why the crowd is there. The crowd is there to
Right.
have a good time and be entertained, and you're
Yeah,
part of the entertainment.
that's
So
right.
I agree with that. I agree with
So
that.
I try to make it fun. It's like anything. It's what you make out of it.
Now there's a mile race that I've done, not lately, but in
I
the
wouldn't be
past.
talking during that.
What's Yeah? Well,
I
I was
wouldn't
gonna
be
say
talking.
there's a mile race that I've done a few times, and it's it's hot, like it's a summer run, and there's a lot of people there, and everybody gets kind of pumped up for it. And when I ran it, I was in good shape, so I was with the elite runners, and everybody's going, under 5 minutes in this group. That's not a run that you're gonna just be kind of lollygagging around. I mean, you might say a couple things. You might say take the lead or something like that if you're running, going on a turn. But you're not really conversing with that, right? Because you're pumping right from the start. Like you're getting off the line, trying to establish position, trying not to cause a crash. You're going so fast that you have to conserve the energy and focus on what you're doing. Plus, then it's a road race, and there's a little bit of uphill, downhill, and turns. So you also have to pay attention to not only if there's a vehicle that somehow pops on the course, but also people, stuff on the road, drains, like things like that you typically wouldn't get on a track. So you have to focus in more. Not to mention, like I said, the fact that it's really hot and you're pushing really hard because you're trying to run a really fast mile. So, like I said, yeah, for sure, that would be one that if someone was trying to talk to me the whole time, I'd be like, "What is their deal? Like, have they never run before? Like, this is not one to have a long conversation. It's only a few minutes. We're only going to run for a few minutes. You can talk all you want after this. I'm going to be here for an hour, because after those kind of races, you usually have to wait for people to finish and then the awards and
Yeah,
all kinds of stuff. But yeah, that's not one that I would be having a thorough, conversation in.
I've never done one like that. Well,
Yeah.
in track season, but not a road race.
Yeah, I was gonna say essentially, like if you're on a track team in a track race, like maybe don't have long conversations at those. Your
Yeah.
coaches probably won't appreciate that too much.
Right. And even if you're racing hard, like you said, you might have small conversations like, watch that stick, or, you know, like you said, take the lead or whatever it might be.
Yeah,
But that's not a conversation.
right, right. Yeah, it gets to be where after a while, I think you kind of figure it out. But if you're new to the sport, then kind of pay attention to what other people are doing, just like anything, kind of observe,
Yeah.
see what they're doing. Just kind of work your way into the group, be the nice person, don't be the jerk, don't be trying to take over everything and set the pace. So kind of that's the summary is kind of have some nice running etiquette, be respectful of the people that you're running with, be respectful of the cars, try to stay away from the dangerous runs. We're on major highways and things like that. um, and yeah, just work your way into it. You'll get it. It'll work out.
Stay off the interstate.
Yeah, probably. Like there's a reason why you have a vehicle on those.
Yeah. That's why it says motor vehicle only.
Yeah, no, well now it's the e-bikes, man. The e-bikes are everywhere. You see them on
Oh,
major highways and stuff like that. And it surprises you because it comes out of nowhere. Like you're like, why is the traffic doing something weird? And then all of a sudden you see someone on like an e-bike doing like I don't even know what are those things do, like 20 miles
I
an hour? Yeah,
Yeah, 20, 20. I don't really know.
30. I'm not really sure either, but yeah, I saw that
50.
yesterday. I saw a car swerving, and I'm like, why are these cars swerving? So I'm looking for a deer, of course,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
it was an e-bike person, just cruising on the highway, and I don't know. I was like, that's different. I thought it was a deer. I was like getting ready for something to jump over the hood.
Gee whiz.
So, but anywho, once again, guys, try to be safe. Be respectful of the cars, and try to get into a run with a nice group and be respectful of that. Any other questions, send them out to us. We'll be happy to answer them. But basically, that covers the running etiquette. Maverick and Wolfman, running out.